Do not adjust your monitors. They're fine. It's this psychedelic design that's getting you, I'll tell you. Hi there, thanks for coming by PosterCentral.com's video blog today. I'm Pete Howard, and look at this, an advertising concert handbill or small poster for the so-called Watts acid test in 1966. Unquestionably an original advertising piece for what the Grateful Dead, the Illustrated History coffee table book called the last of the major acid tests, and perhaps the most legendary. And this is an original advertising piece to get people to code. That is just so great. Now this is trimmed down somewhat, and it's, you know, a bit primitive, although it has that super cool design, but it's just rivetingly psychedelic. It's just, you know, zzz, you know. Now you have to remember, at this very time, in the United States, you know, LP records were the main source of music, and the top 5 albums in the country were The Sound of Music, Barbra Streisand, and 2 by Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass. Fine musicians all, but this stuff was seen as really radical, there's no doubt about it. Now, I've blogged a blank one of these, the red one, and a pink handbill as well, which were mint. And this one, of course, has been used, and as I said, the tour blank area is filled in here, so then you get the debate among collectors, you know, do you want a mint one, a super clean one, or do you want one that was used and has more of a, perhaps a feeling for the day? Back in 1995, I wrote a cover story for Goldmine magazine about collecting music concert posters and so forth. And Joel Sullivan of the San Francisco Chronicle said in my article, I quote him as saying, "Poster collecting is the one hobby where mint is not your most desirable condition." Well, let's just say there's 2 schools of thought on that. I mean, if something's been mass-produced, then yeah, you might as well get a mint one to be better than all the others. But something like this, you know, I don't know. It's a personal choice, isn't it? You know, some people really would like a mint one to frame on their wall, and other people would like to frame something like this, a used one that, if it had ears, it could tell us what happened that night, perhaps. And this is a tour blank, as I pointed out. This is a blank portion down there. There's one known to exist from the Unicorn Theater in La Jolla, California, down below Los Angeles. So, getting to the brass tacks. I don't know if you can quite see that. It looks like heck on my monitor, but real quickly I'll tell you what it says across the top. It says, "The Merry Pranksters and Their Psychedelic Symphony, Neil Cassidy versus Anne Murphy Vaudeville, The Grateful Dead Rock and Roll, Roy's Audio Optics," a real veteran, of course, of the acid tests, "Movies, Ron Boise and His Electric Thunder Sculpture, The Bus," that's highly unusual to mention the bus, and makes it way cool, "Ecstatic Dress, Many Noted Outlaws, and The Unexpectable." And then, of course, you get the big headline, "Can you pass the acid test?" And then, as I said, this has that all-important information filled in down there. And what they did was, it was something pre-printed somewhere else. It was probably cut out of the Los Angeles Free Press, would be my guess. Or it could have been cut out of the LA Times or the Herald Examiner or perhaps some other alternative underground publication, I don't know. But it says, I'll read you exactly what that's, I don't know if you can see it. Whenever I say that, I found out later you can, but let me get over here a little bit. You can read along with me, how's that? "Acid test to integrate Watts," interestingly, in parentheses, "Ken Kesey's Bunch without Kesey at 13331 South Alameda, 8 p.m., $1 admission." And then the last line's really cryptic. It says, "See article on page 10 of this issue." So that, of course, really indicates that little paragraph was cut out of some kind of publication that has a story on the upcoming acid test, which is really outstanding, really cool. So it's interesting. It's definitely an advertising piece. It doesn't give a date or a day of the week, but it does give you an address, a start time, and a price. Very much an advertising piece. So one of 2 things. This was either posted the day of the event only, you know, or it's very possible that in the big red border up here, which you'll see in my other blog on the blank one, they could have written like, you know, "this Saturday," like acid tests so often do, and then it was eventually after the event, it was trimmed down either to get rid of the handwritten part, "this Saturday," or to fit into a frame. That's quite possible also. Okay, real quickly, Holy cats, the event itself, all right? Well, it's actually called the Watts acid test, but it was actually in Compton, California, on the fringe section of Watts. And you know, it was 5 months after the famous LA Watts riots, and so there was still a lot of nervous tension in the air. Held in a vacant warehouse as part of a youth opportunity center, and depending on which source you use, anywhere from 200 to a few hundred people showed up. Speaking of sources, by the way, Tom Wolfe's legendary book, The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test, this is probably printing number 9,000, but still, devotes 12 pages of Tom's book just to the Watts LA acid test, so you can really read up about this piece, and it's a real ball, believe me. The Grateful Dead did play, but Ken Kesey had been exiled to Mexico, and so he wasn't there, and his, shall we say, charismatic and dynamic leadership was being sorely missed by this point, and one of his lieutenants, Ken Babbs, was running things, but was probably a little too dictatorial for the, you know, the LSD culture. You can read all about it. But the pranksters, Merry Pranksters, had all their permits all lined up and everything, and so basically there was no alcohol at this acid test, and so the cops were pretty powerless to just sort of stand by and try to bag a person here and there for jaywalking or whatever weak, flimsy charge, you know, they could trump up. Now, this is also notorious, this event, for an error in the dosage of the Kool-Aid. Of course, there'd be a big container of Kool-Aid, I believe, near the front door, maybe not, but spiked with LSD, and that's how a lot of people tripped out of the acid tests, if not all of them. But somebody put in way too much accidentally, and so you had a lot of freakouts and stuff. And in fact, one poor girl was freaking out and screaming, "Who cares? Who cares?" and stuff. And they put her over the PA system, screeching that. So everybody's overdosed. Poor girl's having a hobo voyage, and, you know, who cares is being screeched over the PA. Boy, they were really on the fringe, and actually that turned off, even the Grateful Dead, it turned them off a bit and started to really frazzle the acid tests. Once again, you had the no Ken Kesey leadership to put a stop to the bummer stuff. On a very bright, happy end note, though, the next morning, cleaning up, you know, in sunshine in Los Angeles, the thing had gone all night, Jerry Garcia really struck it off with Mountain Girl. And they had a good time, reportedly laughing and stuff and cleaning up together and everything. And that was the seed for what would become, of course, a famous relationship later with 2 daughters born to that couple, and eventually 15 years later they got married. So that's a nice way to end the Watts acid test and my blog as well on such a happy note. So great item, great piece, and great seminal event. Thanks a lot for coming by, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.